I don't think I've ever worn this hat on camera before, so this is a new thing for us. Well, in any case, hello, howdy, and welcome back to Random Librarian on YouTube. Today I figured I would do a little bit of a story time about my path to becoming a librarian, because I think it was kind of weird and not what you might expect from someone who sits here and talks about best practices and advice towards your MLIS. So could be interesting. Let me know in the comments if I'm correct or very, very wrong. I want to open by saying that I really should have known that I wanted to be a librarian much, much sooner than I actually did. I grew up pretty much 2-minute walk from my local public library, and we were there all the time. I have this really vivid memory of my brother and I kind of using the library like our own personal Netflix service. We would get kind of like hankerings to see something, walk over, empty their entire stock of Scooby-Doo DVDs or VHSs, I guess at the time, and just have like our own marathon of whatever we wanted to watch. The one in my mind is Scooby-Doo, which is why that was mentioned. But I was also there all the time to check out books and kind of sit there and spread out all of the graphic novels that I was reading all at once, or like anything really. I think I even went through the different stacks and kind of like shelf read for the librarians, putting titles back where they were supposed to be if things were slightly out of order. So I really should have known. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole story. Goodbye, that's the video. No, I'm kidding. Despite using and loving libraries my whole life, it never really occurred to me that the people who work in libraries and librarians, like, that's their job. Like, I think for me it just seemed so much more like a fun thing that you were allowed to do, not so much something that you could train to become. When I was in undergraduate, I had no idea what I wanted to do after school, but libraries continued to be kind of a safe space for me. They were a real love, but not so much a contender for a future career, just because I hadn't sat down and actually thought about it. It's summer after my junior year of college. I was really lucky and got the chance to work for one of my favorite professors in the English department. It was kind of a pet project of his that we would go through the books that were related to the class that I had just done, which was about early writings and publishing in Boston, and go from there. So we went through the stacks in the kind of standard library, the most used library on campus, and found books that kind of deserved to be in the climate-controlled special collections. On the very first time that I was walking through the stacks with my professor and also the head of the special collections at my college, they were kind of showing me what they were looking for or what to look for myself when I was doing it by myself. And the first book that I pulled off the shelf was this gorgeous book. It had been rebound by someone who obviously cared so much for this author. There were handwritten first tries or trial versions of different poems that the author had done, bound next to the final edition. And it had the only, I think possibly the only image of this author ever seen or put together with his collection. So it was like a portrait of the author at the very beginning with like a note saying I think it was by his, or rebound and redone by someone in his family. And it was such a cool find. Right away, the special collections librarian grabbed it, put it in his pocket, and was like, this is coming with me back to the other library. So it was just a really cool first day, and I was really hooked. So that's kind of when I knew I wanted to work in libraries, and I was able to have conversations afterwards with the librarians that I was working with my professor, to kind of figure out how to get to a point where that was something that I could do for life. So heading into senior year after this project, I knew I wanted to become a librarian. I had those conversations. I started doing research. I found 3 different programs that I was interested in, And because I was kind of wonky with my timing, 2 of the 3 required a GRE, which would have pushed back my start date by a full year. And so I sent in all of my eggs in one basket and applied to Simmons because my GPA meant that they didn't require any further testing for me before I sent in my application. Now, I do not recommend this way of doing it. I was really stressed about this. I didn't really understand if graduate school was just as difficult as undergrad, like what are the standards, how many people are allowed in. I had all of these great mentors telling me, no, I'm pretty sure you've got a spot, but it didn't really help my stress level because I didn't like having my whole future a yes or it felt like I could have figured it out the year after, but like it felt to me that my whole future was riding on this one yes or no, and I didn't know anything about their standards or how many people were let in. Also, I felt like I had a bit of imposter syndrome as well because I had never worked in what I thought of as like a normal library setting. I had done these specialized projects. I had worked here and there and other things for different professors, but I didn't have any like library assistant title on my resume or anything like that. But that just added to my stress. But after all of that kind of unnecessary panic attacks and things along those lines, I did get into Simmons and it was a huge relief. I knew what I was doing after I graduated. After getting into the MLIS program, it was actually a lot easier to kind of start applying and start being accepted to those more standard library jobs. So that summer, the summer after I graduated, I worked as a conservation intern at that same special library on campus that I did my original project for. I also worked in 2 public libraries as a library assistant, and I continued doing that through my first semester at grad school. These experiences made me feel a lot more confident in my place at Simmons, which was really helpful. This also meant that I had personal experience to use and to draw from when I was writing different papers for different classes at Simmons, and I had a place to apply everything that I was learning in class and really make it stick and make it feel concrete because I was working in that environment and I could see exactly why the things I was learning were correct and why they were best practices. So that was, really helpful in both senses. I do have another video about just like my straight experience at Simmons with all of the things that I loved as well as some of the things that I didn't love so much or things that I would change. So if that is what you're interested in, or if you're considering an MLIS or Simmons University, I would definitely say to check that one out instead of this video here. Give this a pause, go watch that, come back maybe. So then from there, I think I've kind of mentioned this in a couple of the other library videos that I've made, but I was able to kind of build on my experience and the different jobs that I was doing while I was still in undergrad to start working. So I had the 2 jobs to begin with, and then I turned that into one job that kind of had the same amount of hours as the previous 2 and better pay because I was working more and more and I was working Saturdays and things like that. Then after about a year of that was in a public library that was much closer to Simmons. It was actually really close to where I grew up, so it was a library that I had kind of this long-standing love and just I loved the library so much that I was working at, and the coworkers that I had there were amazing, and it was a huge full circle moment for me really to go and not be just the little kid shelf reading for the librarians without them knowing, but to be the librarian shelving the books and doing projects and helping patrons and all everything that goes along with being a library assistant in a massive public library. So that was huge for me. But I ended up leaving there because they didn't have a full-time position available and moving to a different place a different library it's in Boston city limits, so it's really close to where I live, and it was really close to Simmons as well. And I found out about that job through a classmate actually, and she ended up becoming my boss. And we worked together for about 6 months before she was headhunted for a different different corporation, and I was promoted to running the library. So I've been doing that now for almost 2 years, and it's a lot of work. It's like the size of a branch library of a public library system. And there's only 2 of us who run and do programming and catalog and purchase and do everything that goes into running a library and making it a fun, engaging place to be. So it's a lot to do, and it is really exciting. I still get excited every day that I get to do the things I get to do, and I get to assess what we can do better, and I get to create new programs and try new things and help people fall in love with reading again. So, or for the first time if they're a small child. So, yeah, I think I always end up on this ending note of libraries have always been a great spot for me. They've always been kind of my heart, and being able to work in one as an adult with my degree and with my passion for literacy, that I feel very fulfilled in my choice of career. And if you watching this feel like that resonates with you, I would highly recommend you start doing your own research into the best way that you can figure out if it's a good fit. Either working or volunteering in a library, following an MLIS program, or just, commenting down below or shooting me an email with any questions that you have specific to your situation. Because it is kind of a personal thing and a personal path and a personal story that maybe in 2 years, 3 years, who knows how many years, you can have a Storytime video just like this one explaining how you became a librarian. And I think that's all I have for this video right now. If you do want to go and watch a couple of my other videos, I have some on like library things, library adjacent things, library studies, working in a library, things that are maybe a little bit about working in a library. I also have book reviews and book hauls, as well as an Instagram for this account called Random Librarians. So I hope that something in that array of things is up your alley. If it is, please let me know by hitting the subscribe button or commenting or liking or any of those things that help people do YouTube. And if you've made it this far in the video, massive thank you for sticking around, and I hope I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.